The ballroom shimmered with golden light as the string quartet played, and guests raised glasses in honor of Richard and Diana Wallace's 40th anniversary. Brooke Anderson, 34, sat at the edge of the head table, smiling politely as laughter echoed around her. She'd spent weeks helping plan this event, curating photos, reviewing menus, even altering an old dress she could no longer afford to replace. Just a few tables away, her ex-husband Nathan clinked glasses with her father, while her mother leaned in to admire Nathan's fiancée's earrings. Brooke's stomach twisted, but she held her smile. Then she felt Madison's hand grip her arm tightly. Her 16-year-old daughter leaned in and whispered, "Mom, we need to go. Now." Brooke blinked, startled. "What? Why?" Madison's eyes didn't waver. "I'll tell you in the car." Brooke's heart pounded as she followed her daughter's gaze to Nathan, laughing with the people she once called family. That night, everything changed. Brooke Anderson was 34 years old and rebuilding her life from the rubble of a 10-year marriage that ended in betrayal. A mother of two, she lived in a modest 3-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of her old neighborhood, close enough for school runs, but far enough to feel the difference. Her daughter Madison was 16, sharp-eyed, observant, and often quiet in that way that meant she was always paying attention. Ethan, just 8, was still young enough to believe in superheroes and wide enough eyed to be won over by anyone who handed him ice cream and promises of adventure. Brooke had given up the dream of a gallery of her own and now balanced part-time shifts at a small art gallery with freelance design work, stretching every dollar while maintaining dignity in the face of polite judgment from people who once toasted her engagement to Nathan Pearson with vintage champagne. Her childhood had prepared her well for this tightrope. Raised in a stately New England home under the weight of Richard and Diana Wallace ambitions, Brooke learned early that love in her family was conditional. Richard, a powerful real estate developer, admired strength, money, and reputation. Diana, his perfect social partner, curated the family's image with precision. Brooke, with her sketchbooks and dreams of art school, was tolerated. Her successes were acknowledged with cool nods. Her missteps were remembered forever. When she married Nathan, handsome, driven, and the son of Richard's business associate, her parents glowed with approval. Finally, their daughter had made a proper choice. But marriage to Nathan had not been what it appeared. Beneath the polished exterior was control, distance, and judgment. When Brooke discovered his affair with his 25-year-old assistant Caleb, the betrayal nearly broke her. The divorce was bitter, draining her finances and emotional reserves. Yet she emerged with a fierce sense of purpose. She fought for primary custody of her children and tried to build a home from scratch. Her parents, surprisingly, seemed supportive. They invited her for dinners, sent small gifts, even offered to help with Ethan's extracurriculars. Brooke wanted to believe they had changed. Madison didn't. "I look at you differently now," Madison said one evening while helping dry dishes. "Like you're a mess they're trying to fix." Brooke had smiled tiredly. "They're trying, sweetheart. That's more than they used to do." But Madison stayed guarded. She declined dinner invitations when she could, kept her distance during visits, and watched her grandparents through narrowed eyes. Ethan, on the other hand, bloomed under their attention. Richard took him fishing, bought him baseball equipment, and started talking about future plans, his alma mater business school, the Wallace Geek. Diana praised his good manners and taste in clothes. Ethan soaked it all in. Brooke told herself it was fine. Her parents had always preferred certainty. Ethan was easy to mold. Madison was not. Still, Brooke convinced herself they were finally seeing her worth, even if only through her children. When they invited her to help plan their 40th anniversary celebration, she saw it as a chance to reconnect. She spent hours designing a commemorative photo album, revising the guest list, and tailoring an old dress. She told herself this was how healing began, by showing up, by believing in change. But Madison saw what her mother couldn't yet. The favor, the praise, the sudden warmth. They weren't about love. They were about control. And that anniversary night would prove it. In the months following her divorce, Brooke noticed a surprising change in her parents. Richard and Diana began calling more frequently, offering to help with the kids, inviting her to Sunday dinners, and even sending flowers on her birthday. something they hadn't done since her wedding. It felt strange at first, almost performative, but Brooke wanted to believe it was genuine. Maybe the divorce had softened them. Maybe they saw her struggle and, for once, chose empathy over judgment. Madison, however, wasn't convinced. "They're being nice because they think you're weak now," she said one night after dinner. "They pity you. That's not love." Brooke dismissed the comment. "They're making an effort, Maddie. That counts for something." But Madison's instincts didn't waver. She kept her distance during visits, politely excusing herself to do homework or see friends. Ethan, on the other hand, was swept up in the sudden affection. Richard took him on outings, bought him expensive toys, and introduced him to friends as the future of Wallace Enterprises. Diana fawned over him, calling him her little prince. Madison received fewer words, fewer glances, and fewer gifts. When Brooke brought it up, her mother brushed it off with a laugh. "Madison's always been so independent. She doesn't need the same attention." Brooke felt a pang but said nothing. The real discomfort began when Madison returned from a weekend at the country club with her grandparents and mentioned seeing Brooke's name on paperwork in Richard's office. "There were sticky flags and folders with your name and Nathan's," she said cautiously. "It looked like legal stuff." Brooke frowned. "What were you doing in Grandpa's office?" "Grandma said I could study there. He was golfing." Brooke waved it off. "You probably misread something. It's just business paperwork." But Madison's eyes narrowed. "I know what I saw." Later that week, Brooke visited her parents to finalize the anniversary seating chart. As she passed her father's office, she noticed the door locked. It hadn't been before. A set of keys hung from his belt, jangling as he moved through the house. When she asked to use the office printer, he quickly redirected her to the den. "That room's a mess," he said. "I've got business files everywhere." The answer unsettled her, but she pushed the feeling down. It was easier to believe in goodwill than manipulation. Besides, she had too much else on her plate: rent, deadlines, and the emotional gymnastics through the mail, as if to remind her who had more power. When the invitation to the anniversary gala arrived, Brooke took it as a gesture of inclusion, a chance to prove that even though her marriage had failed, she still belonged in the family. She poured herself into helping. Madison watched silently from the sidelines, saying only once, "You're working really hard for people who've never done the same for you." Brooke had smiled then. "That's what family does, honey. We show up." But deep down, something already felt off, and Madison knew it. The Oak Ridge Country Club glowed with chandeliers and polished silver as Brooke arrived with Madison and Ethan in tow. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, altering a dress she could no longer afford to replace, helping her mother with the menu, creating the commemorative photo album everyone was now flipping through with admiration. Her parents greeted her at the entrance like hosts welcoming a guest, instead of their daughter. Richard barely looked at her before sweeping Ethan into a hug, declaring, "I've got your seat right next to Grandpa." Diana complimented Madison's dress, remarking that the color made her eyes look less tired. Brooke smiled through it all. This was their day, she reminded herself. She was here to keep the peace. That peace shattered when she saw Nathan walk in with Kayla on his arm. He looked like a magazine ad in his tailored suit, Kayla glowing in a designer gown. Brooke's chest tightened. She turned to her sister-in-law, Rachel, who avoided eye contact. "Did you know they were coming?" Brooke asked under her breath. Rachel hesitated. "Your mother sent them a personal invitation." Brooke's stomach dropped. Before she could respond, Richard was greeting Nathan with a backslap and ushering him toward the head table. Diana leaned in to admire Kayla's jewelry, completely ignoring the tension radiating from Brooke. Her voice faltered as she tried to excuse herself for a drink. At the bar, she caught a glimpse of Madison in the corner, texting quickly and scanning the room. Brooke chalked it up to teenage discomfort, but the truth was far worse. During the main course, Aunt Linda pulled Brooke aside in the hallway. Her expression was tight, her voice low. "I overheard your father and Nathan talking about some sort of property transfer, something about securing Ethan's future, and protecting family assets. Brooke, they mentioned you, and not kindly. Brooke blinked. It's probably just estate planning. Dad's always thinking about that. Linda shook her head. No, it felt targeted, like they were trying to move things around behind your back. Brooke brushed it off politely. She had too many guests to worry about and too many emotions to unpack, but the seed of doubt was planted. Then came the moment Madison appeared at her side, face pale, eyes locked on Brooke. We need to go. Now. Brooke was confused. What are you talking about? I'll explain in the car, Madison whispered urgently. But we can't stay. Brooke scanned the room. Ethan was between Nathan and Richard, laughing. Diana was smiling as she whispered something into Kayla's ear. And the photographer was snapping photos of the three men, Richard, Nathan, and Ethan, like they were a generational portrait. Not one included her. Still unsure, Brooke followed Madison toward the terrace. The air outside was warm, but her skin went cold. Madison, she said carefully, you need to tell me what's going on. Madison's voice was low, but clear. Mom, she said, they're planning something. And you're not supposed to see it coming. The car ride away from the country club was silent at first. Ethan sat in the back seat, quietly examining a party favor while Brooke kept her eyes on the road, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Madison sat rigidly beside her, her lips pressed into a line. 15 minutes in, Ethan began to doze, his head slumping against the window. When his soft snores filled the car, Madison finally spoke. Pull over somewhere, she said softly. I need to show you something. Brooke turned into an empty shopping plaza, shut off the engine, and turned to face her daughter. Madison pulled out her phone, her hands trembling. I've been suspicious for months. The way Grandpa looks at you like you're broken. The way he talks about Ethan like he's a business deal. But tonight confirmed everything. She unlocked her phone and opened a photo gallery. This is what I found in Grandpa's briefcase. It was in his office at the country club. I told you I went to the terrace, but I didn't. I went back inside. Brooke gasped as image after image appeared on the screen. Property transfer forms, trust amendments, and custody modification petitions. Her name was listed, but only to be removed or reactivated. Nathan's name appeared often next to Ethan's, in documents clearly stating custodial control and access to family property. The most painful was the transfer of the family's Victorian estate, the house Brooke had been promised since childhood. It was being assigned to Nathan under the guise of Ethan's legal guardian. I don't understand, Brooke whispered. How did you even know to look? Madison's eyes welled with tears. I've been talking to someone, Aunt Samantha. Brooke's heart skipped. Samantha, her father's youngest sister, had been cast out of the family years ago after a fight over inheritance. They hadn't spoken in 15 years. I found her on Instagram a few months ago, Madison admitted. I reached out because the way Grandpa treats you reminded me of stories I'd heard about what he did to her. She handed Brooke the phone again. This time, it was a string of text messages months worth, between Madison and Samantha. Samantha had warned her of patterns, told her to watch for red flags, sudden attention from family, deep involvement in finances, and efforts to exclude those who ask questions. Madison's voice cracked. Tonight, when I saw Nathan with Grandpa and all those people, I knew something was happening. I heard Grandpa laughing with him in the hallway about how you'd never see it coming. So I went into his office. I had to know. Brooke's eyes burned. You shouldn't have done that. It's not safe. I couldn't let them blindside you like they did her. I recorded them too. Madison hit play. Her grandfather's voice came through clearly. Brooke's never had the mindset for legacy. Nathan knows how to handle things. With him and Ethan, the family line is secure. Then her mother's voice. At least Nathan didn't ruin his life over some gallery hobby. We can't risk Brooke making poor choices again. Brooke sat in stunned silence, her stomach twisted with nausea. Her own parents, her ex-husband, plotting to take everything, her home, her son, her future, and doing it all under the banner of family. Madison reached for her hand. I'm sorry I waited this long, but you needed to know. Brooke squeezed back. You didn't wait. You saw it. You saved us. And now, I believe you. This wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't miscommunication or misplaced trust. It was strategy. It was theft. It was war. The morning after the anniversary party, Brooke sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by Madison's photos, screenshots, and audio recordings. Her mind reeled, but her focus sharpened. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a coordinated attempt to erase her as a mother, as a daughter, and as a rightful heir, and she wasn't going to let them succeed. Her first call was to Samantha. Her aunt answered immediately, calm but resolute. Within 20 minutes, she had connected Brooke with Jennifer Reeves, a sharp, independent attorney with no ties to the Wallace name or its legacy. Jennifer wasted no time. After reviewing the documentation Madison had gathered, she filed emergency legal motions to freeze all asset transfers involving Brooke's name and initiated a block on any proposed custody modifications. They were counting on you being passive, Jennifer said. Now we flip the script. Brooke reached out to her brother Brian next, hesitant but hopeful. To her relief, he didn't deny what was happening. Dad told me it was all for tax efficiency, he admitted. But I didn't realize how far they'd gone until Madison sent me the recordings. Before Richard emails that confirmed the coordination between Richard and Nathan and agreed to provide a sworn statement. With her legal team building a wall around her finances and parental rights, Brooke prepared for the next step, confronting Nathan. Following Jennifer's advice, she arranged to meet him at a neutral coffee shop. Her phone, clearly visible on the table, recorded every word. This is unnecessary, Nathan said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Your father and I were just trying to secure Ethan's future. Brooke met his gaze. You mean by transferring my inheritance to you and modifying custody behind my back? Nathan shifted. It wasn't meant to be hostile. Richard thought... Brooke cut him off. Richard thought I'd roll over and sign whatever he put in front of me. He thought wrong. She referenced specific documents, the trust revision, the deed transfer, the custody petition. When she quoted his exact words from the recordings, Nathan's charm cracked. Fine, he said. Yes, they approached me. They wanted control, and I went along with it. But you have to understand, I didn't push this. You didn't stop it either, Brooke replied. And you used Ethan to make it easier. Nathan's silence was all the admission she needed. The next step was emotional, not legal. Brooke enrolled both children in family therapy, determined to shield Ethan from the manipulation he had endured. During one session, he looked at her with confusion. Grandpa said you didn't want me to have good schools, he said quietly. That you were jealous. Brooke knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. I want you to have every opportunity, baby. I just want it to come from love, not strings. While Brooke focused on legal strategy and emotional healing, Madison organized the evidence, photos, recordings, dates, transcripts. She compiled everything into labeled folders, anticipating every rebuttal. Samantha helped guide the legal narrative, adding her own experience as another victim of Richard's manipulations. 3 months after the party, Jennifer organized a final meeting at her office. Present were Brooke, Madison, Samantha, Jennifer, Richard and Diana Wallace, Nathan, and their respective legal counsel. Brian participated via video call. Jennifer opened the meeting by placing the evidence folders on the table. Madison sat at the head, spine straight, eyes steady. She wasn't the child in the corner anymore. She was the reason this truth had surfaced. "I'll begin by addressing the attempted trust modifications," Jennifer said calmly, followed by the documented efforts to alienate Ms. Anderson from her son and manipulate asset control. Richard tried to interrupt, but Jennifer held firm. "We have recordings, signed statements, and a clear pattern of intent. I suggest we proceed." Over the next 4 hours, every secret was laid bare. The forged timing, the hidden accounts, the recorded conversations, the impact on both children. Diana cried quietly. Richard sat in silent rage. Nathan slumped in his chair. By the end, a comprehensive agreement was drafted and signed. Brooke retained full rights to her inheritance. Both Madison and Ethan were declared equal beneficiaries to any future family assets, and grandparent visitation would be supervised and conditional on respectful behavior. Richard's role as trustee was officially terminated and reassigned to a neutral third party. As the meeting adjourned, Richard made one last attempt. "You've destroyed this family." Madison stood, facing him. "No, you did. We just stopped you from finishing the job." The Wallace legacy would no longer be a weapon. Not against Brooke, not against her children, not ever again. The weeks following the legal showdown felt like an emotional exhale. With the agreements finalized, Brooke no longer had to brace for the next surprise attack. Her inheritance was officially secured under her sole authority. The Victorian house, her childhood home, was returned to her name. The revised documents ensured that both Madison and Ethan were equal beneficiaries to any family trust moving forward, with a third-party trustee overseeing everything. Grandparent visitation would now happen on a supervised schedule, a boundary that once felt unimaginable, but now felt essential. For the first time in years, Brooke slept through the night. She used part of her restored inheritance to buy a modest but bright two-strained house just outside town. It wasn't as grand as the colonial she'd once shared with Nathan, but it was hers. The backyard had space for Ethan's soccer net and enough sun for Madison's little herb garden. Brooke felt rooted again, not just in place, but in purpose. At the gallery, her part-time role quickly turned into a full-time management position. The owner, impressed with her poise during recent chaos, gave her full responsibility for upcoming exhibits. For years, Brooke had quietly downplayed her professional ambitions, trained to believe that family came before fulfillment. Now, she had both, and they weren't in conflict. Ethan adjusted slowly. Therapy sessions helped him understand that love didn't require choosing sides. He stopped parroting lines about legacy and started asking more questions. "Mom, why do Grandpa and Dad care so much about money?" he asked one day. Brooke smiled gently. "Because they think money equals love. But you're learning that real love protects people, not things." Madison, meanwhile, flourished. She and Aunt Samantha grew incredibly close, trading stories, recipes, and texts at all hours. Madison found comfort in knowing someone else had been through the same storm and come out stronger. She began working on a school project about family systems, interviewing Samantha about her experience being written out of the Wallace narrative. Brooke watched with awe as her daughter transformed from a quiet observer into a young woman with voice, conviction, and remarkable strength. The family was no longer defined by blood alone. It was defined by trust, truth, and shared resilience. Brooke still heard from her parents, but only through formal communication channels. Diana would send carefully worded emails confirming visitation logistics. Richard remained distant, his ego bruised by the loss of control. But the damage they had done to their relationship was too deep to undo. And for once, Brooke didn't feel the need to fix it. She stopped trying to be the daughter they wanted and embraced the mother her children needed. She no longer measured her value by their approval. Every document she had signed, every courtroom meeting she had endured, wasn't just to protect assets. It was to protect dignity, to draw the line where abuse disguised as tradition would no longer be tolerated. For the first time in her life, Brooke wasn't asking to be seen. She was standing in full view, unapologetic, unshaken, and wholly her own. She had become the protector, the provider, the pillar. And she had earned every part of it. The late summer sun bathed the porch in gold as Brooke and Madison sat side by side, sipping lemonade from mismatched mugs. The breeze stirred the wind chimes Madison had picked out from a flea market, soft, delicate notes floating through the air. A full year had passed since the anniversary party, since the moment everything shifted. And somehow, in the quiet, Brooke felt more grounded than she ever had in her parents' sprawling estate. Madison leaned her head on Brooke's shoulder and asked, "Do you think they'll ever change?" Brooke exhaled slowly. "No, honey, not really. People like your grandfather don't change. They adapt, they scheme. But true change?" She shook her head. "That takes humility, and he doesn't know what that feels like." Madison nodded. "Then why do I still think about them?" "Because you're human, because you loved them, and because what they did wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. They didn't just betray us with money. They tried to rewrite who we were, and that's the hardest kind of betrayal to forget." They sat in silence for a while, watching Ethan run barefoot through the sprinkler in the yard. He giggled freely now, no longer guarded or trying to impress people who only saw him as a legacy. Madison traced the rim of her mug. "You know, I didn't think it would work," going through his files, sending screenshots to Aunt Samantha. "I thought they'd just find a way around it." Brooke turned to her. "But you didn't stop. You trusted your instincts. You saw what I didn't want to see." Madison's eyes filled with quiet pride. "I couldn't let them erase you." "And you didn't," Brooke whispered. "You saved us both." The wind shifted slightly, cool and gentle, and with it came a sense of closure. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because it no longer had power. Brooke had built something new, not from the ruins of what her family had destroyed, but from the foundation she'd created with her children. A home built on trust, choice, and mutual respect. She looked at Madison, now 17, more woman than child, and saw a strength in her that no legacy could fabricate. It wasn't about inheritance or titles or bloodlines. It was about standing firm in the truth, even when that truth was painful. "We didn't just survive them," Brooke said. "We changed the rules. They thought they could control the story, but we took the pen back." Madison smiled. "And we're not giving it up." Brooke raised her glass in a quiet toast. "To boundaries that hold, and to girls who don't stay quiet." They clinked their mugs together, and for the first time in a long time, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, empowered, whole. "They tried to take my son and my future, but my daughter gave me both back. When I was too afraid to look at the truth, she faced it head on. While I tried to keep the peace, she drew the lines that protected us. They saw Ethan as a symbol, an heir, a pawn in a family legacy. I saw him as a child who needed protecting, not molding, not claiming, just love and safety. My name is Brooke Anderson. I trusted my parents. I believed that because they raised me, they would never harm me. But betrayal doesn't always come with fists. It comes in documents, in fake smiles, in manipulation disguised as tradition. My daughter Madison taught me to trust myself again. She showed me that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "We need to go, now." We didn't win because we had lawyers. We won because we had each other. And because the truth, when faced head-on, has a power that no amount of generational wealth can silence. If someone in your life sees the truth before you do, listen, they just might save everything. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more real stories of women rising from betrayal to power, one truth at a time, because sometimes the people who protect us most are the ones we least expect. And sometimes, the legacy we leave behind starts the moment we refuse to be erased.